right, so here are your notes. So this is on the foldable from yesterday. I am on the tab that says period. Okay, period is the length of one full cycle of the graph. So yesterday when we were looking at sine, it started in the middle, went up, middle, down, middle, and it took 2 pi to make that one full cycle. So if you ever have a b value, that's going to change how long the period is. Okay, so our b value is our horizontal stretch and compression. So to figure out how long it takes to make one full cycle, if there's a b value, we do 2 pi, and then we divide by whatever our b value is. Okay, so in example 7, the number in front of x is 3. So they did 2 pi divided by 3 to figure out that I'm going to have one full cycle in 2 pi over 3. The best way to graph this is if you're not shifting left or right, we're still starting at 0, 0. And I know that it has to make one full cycle at 2 pi over 3. So I put my end point at 2 pi over 3. And I know between these two, it has to cross in the middle. And as long as it's not reflected, between the first 2 points, it has to go up. And between the second 2 points, it has to go down. So there's the 5 points that you're responsible for. So in example 8, our b value is 1/2. So I'm going to do 2 pi divided by 1/2. So 2 divided by 1/2 is actually going to give you 4, and then put the pi behind it. So it says the graph of 3 sine x is stretched so that one cycle is completed in 4 pi. So the graph that's here is just sine. So we're going to start at 0, 0 because I'm not shifting left or right. And I know my one cycle has to finish all the way over here at the end at 4 pi. Between those 2 points, I know it crosses again in the middle. Between the first 2 points, it goes up. Between the second 2 points, it goes down. And then connect. So you have your wave. Find the period of y equals 2x and sketch on from 0 to 2 pi. So here our b value is 2. So to find the period, I do 2 pi divided by 2. The 2's cancel out, and my period for this graph is pi, which means between 0 and pi, we're going to make one full cycle. So I put my endpoints at 0 and pi. Between those two, I know that it's also going to cross in the middle. So I put a dot at pi over 2. Between the first 2 points, it goes up. Between the second 2 points, it goes down. And connect the dots. Okay. On number 10, we start talking about phase shift. Phase shift is another name for your horizontal shift. So shifting your graph left or right. Cross this line off. The best way to look at phase shift is actually to rewrite the equation. So we want to rewrite it so that we have b and then parenthesis x plus c. So we want to rewrite our graph because then your c value is your phase shift. And get rid of that. Okay, so looking at number 10, I need to rewrite it. So I have 2 sine 3x minus pi. So the 2 is going to be your amplitude, so we're shifting up and down. The 3 is going to change the period, and then this pi right here is going to shift left and right, but we need to rewrite it first. So 2 and sine are not going to change. Still have a parenthesis. 3 parenthesis x minus, because I'm factoring that 3 out, I have to take whatever the value here is and divide it by the number that I'm factoring out. So this is going to become pi over 3. So this right here is my new equation. Okay, so if you want to double check it, if you were to multiply that back, you would have 3 times x is 3x. 3 times negative pi over 3 is going to be a negative pi. So it will get us back to our original equation. Okay, so when I go to graph this, I'm not shifting up or down, so I'm still at a midline on my x-axis. However, my amplitude is 2, so I know that I'm going up to 2 and down to 2. Okay, however, this pi over 3 tells me that I'm shifting. Remember, when it's inside parentheses like that, it's always shifting the opposite direction of what you think, so that negative really means that it's shifting to the right. So I'm going to go to the right pi over 3. And then when I find the period on this graph, I do 2 pi divided by my b value, which is 3. So my period is 2 pi over 3. So that means from this starting point of pi over 3, 2 pi over 3 later, it has to make one full cycle. So if I take pi over 3 as my starting point and add 2 pi over 3 to it, 1/3 and 2/3 is 1 whole pi. So what that tells me is over here at the end at pi, I should have one full cycle. So there's my starting point and my end point. Remember the pattern of sine, so between those 2 points, it crosses in the middle. Between the first 2, it goes up. Between the second 2, it goes down, and then you connect your dots. So number 11. Number 11, you don't have to rewrite because the b value is just 1, and our c value is pi over 2. Okay, so it is shifting my graph to the left, pi over 2. Shifting it to the left, pi over 2, because it's always opposite. So if it's a plus, it's really going the opposite direction. Okay, our amplitude is 3. This value right here is our amplitude, and it's also negative. Okay, so we're still at a midline on the x-axis, but I'm going to draw this line up here that shows me I'm going up to 3, and this one down here that shows me I'm going down to 3. So up 3, down 3. Okay, I'm shifting my graph left pi over 2, so I'm starting at negative pi over 2, and because I didn't change the period, it's still 2 pi. Okay, so after pi over 2 plus 2 pi, we're at 3 pi over 2. Okay, so I'm starting at negative pi over 2. I know that 2 pi is going to make one full cycle, so that tells me that my graph should end at 3 pi over 2. And then you draw your pattern of sine. So starts in the middle, ends in the middle. Right between those 2 points, it's also in the middle. Now normally between the first 2 points it goes up, but because it's reflected between the first 2 points, it's going down. So between the next 2 points, it needs to go up. Draw your graph, connect the dots. Okay, so same thing. We are going to skip this one. Okay, don't worry about finding these endpoints. Rewrite your equation like I taught you. So looking at number 13, we have negative 2 sine 1/2 x plus pi over 2. So I want to rewrite this 1/2 and then x plus some number. So the trick to that number is you have to take the pi over 2 and divide it by 1/2. Okay, so pi over 2 divided by 1/2 will give you just pi. Okay, remember when you're dividing fractions, change division to multiplication, and then flip this over So your 2's cancel out. You're left with pi. So here is our graph. So according to this graph, my amplitude is 2. So I'm going to go to 2, and I'm drawing my lines. Positive 2 and negative 2. Okay, notice that it is reflected, so watch that negative. This plus pi is going to shift it to the left pi. So that left endpoint is negative pi. The other thing that you need to check is the period. So we take 2 pi and divide it by the b value, which in this case is 1/2. 2 pi divided by 1/2 is 4 pi. So that means that in 4 pi from its starting point, it will make 1 full cycle. Well, we started at negative pi. So if I add 4 pi to that, you get 3 pi. So at 3 pi, it should make 1 full cycle. That's the right endpoint. Then we draw our graph. So starts in the middle, ends in the middle, and right between those two, it also crosses that midline, that sinusoidal axis. Between the first 2 points, it normally goes up, but because it's a reflection, it goes down. Between the second 2 points, it goes up. Connect the dots.